Welcome back to our second episode of Vendetta Sports Media's T20 Cricket World Cup coverage. I'm Jerry Walker. Alongside me today is Jarrod Prosser. And Jarrod, there were some interesting matches this last 2 days, some blowouts that we kind of expected and some close games. What's your general reaction of the weekend?
Yeah, so we've had the second round of the second, I guess, set of matches from the preliminary rounds now, and we've we've got we've got these groups set up really evenly, particularly Group B, where, as we'll get to later, every team is one win, one loss so far. All four teams are in with a chance of going through to the Super 12s. But yeah, I mean, even just looking at the results themselves, there was some nice close ones. There was a couple of last over games. There was a blowout. There was one game of outstanding quality, which was Scotland Ireland, which we'll get to later. That was a ripping match to watch. We had a good variety. We even had a hat trick.
Yes, we did. Yeah, that was something we haven't seen yet in this tournament, and impressive to see that this early. So I think we just hop right into it. We'll start with the first match on, Tuesday morning or Monday night in America, Tuesday morning in Australia afternoon.
Yeah, Tuesday afternoon over here.
Yeah, Namibia and the Netherlands, which once again, the Dutch left it late to win that match, just like they did with the first one. It was the third to last ball. And the Netherlands ended up winning 122 for 5 to 121 for 6. So what's your overall impression of that match?
A bit of a low scoring game, 121 to 122. Again, that two-paced pitch in Geelong at Kardinia Park came to the fore. I thought the Dutch rotated their bowlers pretty well to keep Namibia on the back foot in this one. And of course, Namibia seemed to lose wickets at regular intervals. They weren't able to build up partnerships, which never helps. Aside from that, though, there was one nice partnership, and that was for the fifth wicket between Jan Frelink and the Old Man River skipper of Namibia, Gerhard Erasmus. They put on 41 for the fifth wicket, but it wasn't a quick scoring 41. It was almost like a one-day international. They were going at about 4 and over rather than the 6 to 7 to 8s you want. And that was a real shame because the next two batsmen the two people sitting in the sheds with their pads on ready to go were David Wiese and JJ Smith, and they're both big hitters, but quick scorers. So it was almost, from a Namibian point of view, you almost wanted to lose one of Erasmus or Frilling, probably Erasmus, just to get one of those big hitters in and have somebody just knocking the ball around, turning over the strike, and somebody trying to hit the boundaries and go for the big scores. But look, ultimately it did impact the Namibian innings to have 121 with only 6 wicket loss. That's just a really slow scoring run rate. Frelink had 43, but off 48 deliveries, like I said, a slow rate before the big lefty skied one to mid-on. Wasn't too much else to speak of. Wiese, one of those big hitters, had 11 off 5 deliveries late in the innings, which shows you what he can do. I thought the Dutch bowled really well in this one. Namibia got hold of Tim van der Gooten, so he gave up 29 off his 3 overs, but otherwise all of the Dutch bowlers were really economical. They shared the wickets around too. Basteleda was the only person to pick up multiple wickets. So ultimately, I thought it was a really good bowling effort from the Dutch. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, it was all around well done. And I mean, from Namibia's batting point, which shows the Dutch bowling, Devon Lecoq and Jan Nicol Lofty Eaton both were out after only 2 balls, which showed that they were kind of never really in it to begin with. The Namibian batsmen were kind of not getting the hang of the ball like we saw them do the other day, which is somewhat surprising. But you mentioned Basteleda. He had the 2 wickets, getting out Erasmus and Frelink off of 3 balls. And then he also made 2 catches early in the game to get 2 more wickets for the Netherlands.
Ooh. Yeah, I forgot about those, actually.
He had the first 2 catches, or caught the first 2 wickets.
And I guess with like safe in the knowledge that they were chasing a pretty low total, the Dutch really came out and attacked. I mentioned on our last pod that I was really impressed with Max O'Dowd. He had another good innings, 35 in even time, 35 off 35 deliveries. But it was his opening partner, Vikram Singh, who really pushed it. 39 runs off 31 balls. He was either hitting it to the boundary or not scoring. So he had a couple of boundaries. He had 3 sixes. So he was swinging hard, and it was either maximums or dot balls. So entertaining to watch, if nothing else. Those two put on a 59-run stand for the opening wicket. And Delata, who came in at first drop, he had 30 in even time as well. So that top three really pushed. They took a lot of that run chase out of the way.
That just showed how top heavy their lineup was. Those top 3 guys combined for 114 runs, but after that, I think it was about 15 runs batted in by the other 5-6 guys who were up.
Yeah.
So that's something they have to worry about moving forward.
I'm not too concerned. I mean, the Dutch middle order isn't too bad for a country of their stature, but they did have a bit of a stumble in this one. They lost 3 for 1 inside a couple of overs. Just to put a little bit of a scare into things. Like they weren't ever going to run out of batsmen, but because the wickets slowed down the run rate, there was a danger of them running out of deliveries to actually achieve the total. As it was, they surpassed Namibia with only 3 balls to spare. And it was Delata who was the man of the match in this game, and the bowler, Tim Pringle, who steadied the ship, essentially, and Delata hit the big 6 to win the match.
Yeah, it's kind of like what you've said. Delata really stepped up this match again, looking like the best player on this Dutch side. What do you think moving forward? Because the Netherlands now have 2 wins, and typically you would think they're almost a shoo-in to advance from the group. But they have a very low net run rate and only 2 points ahead of both Namibia and Sri Lanka, who have relatively not easy matches, but Namibia plays the UAE, and we would expect Sri Lanka to beat the Netherlands. So,
yeah, look at Namibia. As much as the Netherlands top the group, I think Namibia are in the box seat here. They need a win against the UAE, and the UAE are the worst team in this comp, and they do have, as you mentioned, Jerry, that big net run rate advantage over the Sri Lankans and Dutch. I think that will be enough to see them through. And we'll get to the predictions for the next round later and how that will impact the final groups. But having said that, the Dutch are 2 for 2. They've done their job so far. They've still got to play the toughest team in the group, but they've beaten the teams in front of them. That's all you can ask. Sri Lanka looked much, as we'll get to soon, Sri Lanka looked much better this time around than they did in their first game against Namibia. But at the same time, you'd rather have the runs on the board, so to speak. You'd rather have those wins sitting there, and if you can pull out a fluky result, you get the group. If you don't, there is a danger, even though they're 2 for 2, that they can go home still. Yeah. One thing, though, it has to be said here, you look at the winner of this group, it goes into the Super 12 group with Australia, England, and New Zealand, which is a much tougher group. I can't help but thinking you'd rather be second in this group.
Oh, absolutely.
And you'd avoid Australia, England, and New Zealand. And you would play India, who are missing their 2 best bowlers, as we mentioned in our preview pod. Pakistan, who are famously flaky, and a South African side that are a little bit unproven. I'd almost rather finish second in this group and go into the other side of the draw.
Yeah, absolutely. That's always a strategy that I look at when it's the FIFA World Cup is if you finish second, you may have this easier side of the draw. For example, like England in 2018 managed to finish second and avoided Brazil, France, Portugal, all these powerhouses, which in this instance might be the better thing for, say, Sri Lanka if they were to finish second behind Namibia.
Yeah.
That would be because it looks like we'll get to that in a second, but they look like they're getting their groove going. It was only the UAE, but if they can get their groove going even more and somehow finish second in that group, they could definitely. I could see them getting into the semifinals with a bit of luck because, as you said, Pakistan's flaky, India's missing their best players, and we don't know. There's a big question mark around South Africa.
Yeah. And look, South Africa, if they can put it together, will be very good. But, it's not like they're, inconsistent like Pakistan or the West Indies. It's just that they've got a lot of talent that hasn't necessarily done it over in Australia. And Australian conditions are, as much as we're on a similar sort of latitude to, or longitude, whichever one is across, I can't remember. But yeah, we're at a similar, we'll call it latitude to South Africa over here in Australia. The conditions are quite different. Even New Zealand, which is only a 3-hour flight from the east coast of Australia, the conditions are different. So, South Africa have got a talented lineup, but it's still one that you need to see a bit of proof of concept from them over here. So yeah, I'd almost rather finish second in this group.
Yeah, absolutely. And now we'll move on to that other match in this group, Sri Lanka and the UAE. Sri Lanka won by 79 runs, 152 for 8 to UAE's 73. Did we expect anything less? Or is this pretty much how we thought it would go?
Well, I got to admit, before the tournament, you would have said, yes, Sri Lanka will romp in against the UAE, but Sri Lanka was so bad in that first game, and the UAE was surprisingly chippy. So it was a bit of a danger game, but to Sri Lanka's credit, they shook off whatever rust, broke out of whatever funk they were in. They batted first, and it was an explosive start. They were going at 10 and over before Mendes departed. Quite frankly, they looked on target for a total in the 190 to 200 range about halfway through proceedings. But then the hat-trick happens. The young UAE leggy, Karthik Meliappan, he put the skids on the Sri Lankan innings with the tournament's first hat-trick, his nation's first hat-trick. So I tell you what, there was a ripping ball in there as well. The third wicket, the actual hat-trick ball to get Dasun Shanaka, the Sri Lankan captain, was an absolute ripper. Just went through the gate, took the stumps. Like, he did not read it at all. Looked like a bit of a top spinner. That was a genuinely world-class piece of bowling, that one.
Oh yeah, it was a hat-trick.
Oh yeah, and look, anytime you get a hat-trick, it's on an international stage, it's a wonderful achievement. But the first one was a bit of a hoik. The second one was a nice little ball across the left-hander, got a little feathered edge to the keeper. But the third one, that was a wonderful ball. That was almost reminded me of the long retired Indian leg spinner Anil Kumble. It was just one of those ones that, top spin, a little bit of bounce on it as well, just completely took him in pitch, just completely deceived him. Not so much with side spin, but with the top spin and the depth of the ball. It's worth mentioning Pathum Nissanka, who the opener for Sri Lanka. He was one ball away from carrying his bat. He got out in the second last ball of the innings as he tried to move that run rate up. He had 74 off just 60 balls. He had 4 boundaries, 2 sixes. Sri Lanka really needed a spark, and it was Nissanka who picked up man of the match in this one, who gave it to them. There wasn't too much else to speak of. Mendes had a quick 18. De Silva had 33, which was a nice little cameo. But geez, I tell you, the UAE bowlers just got torn apart. At the top of the order there, Janal Sadiq, 4 overs, none for 36. Yeah. His opening bowling partner, Kashif Daud, only lasted 1 over. He had 14 runs off that first over, and we didn't see him again. Really the only bowler that shone for United Arab Emirates in this one was Meliappan with that hat-trick.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, looking at the bowling on the Sri Lankan side, Dushmanth Chamira finished with 3 wickets in 3.5 overs, allowing only allowing 15 runs. So that just shows some solidness behind there. But I do
believe picked up 3 as well, which is a good sign for him. He's the bellwether for the Sri Lankan bowling. If Hasharanka's bowling well and taking wickets, then Sri Lanka generally do pretty well. Yeah, so to see him pick up 3 was a good sign.
And he only allowed 8 runs in that. But the question up for me is, I believe Chamira, he left injured in that match. So
Yeah.
speak into anything that it looked like he kind of just pulled up with something after bowling.
Yeah. I'm not quite sure what it was, but I haven't actually seen any reports confirming, if he's out, or if so, how long he's out for. But yeah, he's like next to Hasadanga. I reckon he's the second best bowler in the Sri Lankan lineup. So him missing, yeah, there's not a lot of depth in Sri Lankan bowling. So him missing will be a real body blow to them. We haven't mentioned the UAE batsman yet, and there's a reason for that. There's really nothing to mention. Ayan Afzal Khan had a brief little 19-run cameo late. Sadiq, who bowled awfully, at least made up for it a little bit with a quick fire 18. But look, in an innings where you only score 73 runs, there's clearly not much that you can take from that as a batting side.
No, not at all. And I mean, the one who stood out to me was Muhammad Wasim because he had a great first match for Namibia or for the UAE, but he kind of just didn't get anything going. He was out for 2 runs after, I believe, 4 balls. So
yeah, I think we call that regression to the mean.
Yeah, it's like you said, nothing really to mention on the United Arab Emirates batting side. One other stat that was interesting to me was they were 21 for 4, and then they only made it to 42 for 7 by the next 3 wickets. So it's just, I don't know if that shows how strong this Sri Lankan bowling was or how bad the UAE bats were, but probably a little bit of both.
Yeah, I agree. There's some column A, column B in that. Yeah, and look, if it wasn't for Sadiq hitting out at the end of the innings, this could have been a 50-55 run total. We could have been looking at a 100-run loss, give or take. So, yeah, there's not really much to say. This was more what we expected from the UAE, quite frankly. And they do become the first side that is officially eliminated from the tournament too. So they, with a really poor net run rate, I suppose mathematically there's still a chance, but it would take the miracle of all miracles. So they're not officially dismissed from the tournament, but realistically, we know their next match is going to be their last one.
Yeah.
But look, they've got the highlight. They've got the Meliuppen hat-trick.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, this wasn't a team we expected to do a ton in, but it's kind of a growing cricketing nation. So maybe 2 years' time, they may have a bit better of a team, maybe even get a win or 2. So, but we'll move on from the action of Group A to probably the most exciting match of the last couple of days, Scotland and Ireland, which was just an amazing match all around. Ireland ended up winning by 6 wickets with 180 for 4 to 176 for 5 for Scotland. But Scotland started out so strong with Michael Jones going 86 runs from 55 balls. But what can you say about the Scottish innings maybe?
Well, in their first match, it was George Munsey who set them up for the win, and he went out in the second over. He had, I think, 1 run off 2 balls, I think it was. But, you looked at that and thought, oh, geez, the Scots could be in some strife here. But they consolidated well. A 59-run partnership between Jones and Matt Cross for the second wicket. Jones and the skipper, Richie Berrington, had 77 for the third. And that set up a really, quite a formidable chase for the Irish. You mentioned Jones, 86 runs off 55 balls, 6 boundaries, 4 sixes, explosive hitting. And when he wasn't hitting the boundary, he hit it really precisely. He found gaps. He was able to get 1s and 2s down at Bellerive Oval as well. Even the ball he lost his wicket to, he absolutely middled it. He just swung a little bit early and skied it to deep mid-on. I think it was Adair that took the catch. But he was hitting the ball so purely. It was really good. Berrington, 37, Cross, 28. They were really the only 2 that had any other impact on the scoreboard. But, yeah, overall, when you score 176 and you're coming up against a relative, a nation on a similar standard to yourself in Ireland, you're probably sitting there going, we can win this. From the Irish bowling perspective, Barry McCarthy was absolutely flogged in this one. 59 runs he conceded off his 4 overs. I'm not sure I would concede 59 runs on 4 overs.
And he didn't
He
even get
got
he didn't even get a
carted.
wicket either.
No, he got thumped. Like Gareth Delaney, none for 28 off 3 overs is not good, but it pales in comparison to what happened to poor Barry McCarthy.
Oh yeah, I would
But
say
Curtis Camphor, yeah,
yeah.
just a quick one on Curtis Camphor. Not a noted bowler. He's an all-rounder, but he's much more a batting all-rounder. He picked up 2 for 9 for his 2 overs, getting both Cross and Barrington. Yeah, and then it turned out that Camphor, not to bury the lead here, but Camphor got man of the match mostly for his batting, but his bowling effort, it was important as well. It took out 2 really good supporting players for Jones, who played a special innings.
Yeah, it was Camper just came in kind of clutch, getting those 2 wickets to get to the later part of the Scottish lineup that really didn't end up doing a whole lot. But
Yeah,
it was also, like you said, his bat, him and George Dockrell, they combined for
yeah.
111 runs off 59 balls. Curtis Camper alone had 72 off 32 and had a hat trick of 4s in that 19th over to kind of reach that mark and get that victory.
Yeah, in Ireland's first game when they went down, it was Camphor, it was Dockrell, and I think it was Gareth Delaney as well, who all scored in the 20s, all got good starts, were looking pretty well set in their innings, and all fell at really inopportune times for the Irish. This time, Dockrell had 29 again, but he played the sheet anchor role. He let Camphor do the hitting and just kept trying to rotate the strike to get Camphor back on strike. But yeah, 72 off 32 balls. Like that's that's an even quicker. Yeah, it's an even quicker scoring rate than Jones had, and Jones batted superbly. Camphor just belted the bejesus out of the ball. But those 2 really did launch. In the first game, they were trying to launch a bit of a rescue act from a failing top order. They kind of had to do that as well. In this game as well. The Irish were pretty positive at the start, although they lost Andrew Balbirnie and Paul Sterling, both the openers, fairly cheaply. Lorcan Tucker coming in at first drop, characteristically aggressive, but went for 20. And when Harry Tector went out, the Irish were teetering a bit, 4 for 61, and they were looking at a required run rate of a little bit over 10 and over at that point. But yeah, Camphor and Dockrell were, particularly Camphor, were excellent. They the last game they failed to make the most of good starts. No problem today. Big hitting, accurate placement, and as a bonus, they both got red ink next to their name. They both finished not out.
Yeah, and I mean, the combined, they only had 2 dot balls between the 12th and 16th overs, which shows that they were just making contact, putting the ball in play and scoring runs. And then
they were not tied down. It was a really good T20 innings from the 2 of them, a really good T20 partnership.
Absolutely. And I mean, even in that 13th over, that's the one that really stood out to me looking at it was they got 18 runs off Mark Watt, who that kind of gave them that momentum and that confidence that, oh yeah, we can hit these guys and go out and get that chase done.
Well, that's it. When you're chasing 10 and over, when you're chasing, double figures per over, you just need, you're not going to go and get 10 every over. You're going to have the odd over where it's 7 or 8 or whatever. But you need 1 or 2 overs where you just flail the bowling to all parts of the park. And, those 18 runs, 16 runs, 20 run overs, they're the ones that bring you back into it. They mean that you can have a little bit of a cushion with some of the overs where you don't reach 10, but it also just puts the fear of God into the bowlers who are sitting there thinking we can bowl aggressively because we've got runs on the board. All of a sudden that target comes back into play and the bowlers get a little bit defensive. They get they might pull back their length a bit trying to put you on the back foot. But you can anticipate that and you can place the ball where you want to place it. You can run some ramps, you can pull and hook and cut if the ball's a bit wide. So, those big overs, they're, as much as they're good on the mathematics side of things, they're pretty good on the, I guess, the mental side of the game as well.
And I mean, from the 12th over to when it finished in the 19th over, that pairing got over 11 or more runs in every single over. So they were just hitting the bejesus out of the ball and forcing a lot of pressure on Scotland's bowling, which ended up crumbling a little bit at the end.
Yeah, I was pretty disappointed with Scotland's bowling late on. It's got to be said. As much as the batting was good, I I thought there were a few too many four balls bowled, like a few too many balls that were easy to put away. No multiple wicket takers. There was nobody in the Scottish bowling attack who conceded a run a ball or less. Like everybody went for more than what they should have.
Mm.
So as much as it's a great performance from Camphor in particular, the Scots were kind of complicit with their bowling, if that's the right way to put it.
Yeah. It was nothing special this time. We saw them have a great bowling performance against the West Indies the other day, but this was about as opposite as you could get from the bowling side of things. But we'll move on to that West Indies and Zimbabwe match that was concluded last night in Australia, this morning in the US. And the West Indies won by 31 runs, 153 for 7 to the Zimbabwe's 122 all out. Well, it wasn't necessarily a good start for the West Indies. They went for, I know they made it up to, or it was a very good start. They got 90 for 2, but then it was that next 4 wickets where they went to 101 for 6. So they lost 4 wickets and only got 11 runs.
An interesting one from the start here. In T20, most sides in Test match cricket, you'll more often see sides bat first. They want to get the runs on the board and not have to bat on 4th and 5th day wickets. In T20, you tend to want to bowl first and let the other team set a target so that you can pace your innings in response. The West Indies won the toss and batted here, which was a surprising call. But it did work out. Kyle Mayers, had 28. It was a nice 49-run partnership between Johnson Charles and Evan Lewis. But it was Charles's run out. That triggered that mini collapse. They lost, as you mentioned, they lost 3 wickets in the space of an over, essentially.
Yeah.
Rovman Powell, who was the guy who was responsible for that mix-up with Charles, he and Akeal Hussain steadied the ship with their own 49-run partnership at the death to give the Windies bowlers something to bowl to, a good total to protect. Johnson Charles, he was looking on. He was looking really good, 45 off 36 with a couple of sixes before he was essentially ran out by Powell. It was just, really bad communication. Saw him stranded at the striker's end. Powell's 28 off 21 was good. Hussain had 23 off 18 at the end of the innings, like I said. But the big one here, when Zimbabwe won the other day, Jerry, I thought it was based on the strength of their 3 pacemen, their 3 young pacemen.
Yeah.
So Ngarava, Tendai Chitara, and Blessing Muzurabani. But they picked up, I think, 7 wickets between them in the last game. Ngarava and Chitara are both wicketless in this one. Muzurabani picked up 2 wickets, but he was quite expensive. I think he ended up with 2 for 39. But they did get a really good bowling performance from their star all-rounder, Sikandar Raza.
Yes,
he picked up 3 for 19 from his 4 wickets. So not just picking up wickets, but really economical. And he got rid of Jason Holder as well, who was a very dangerous late innings hitter for the Windies. So 153, it could have been worse if Raza didn't do his thing, because those young Zimbabwean quicks, and they are very, very talented, but they are very, very young. They got taken to school a bit today.
Absolutely. I mean, Raza was the bowler, I believe, that didn't give up a boundary or a 6 and finished with 7 dot balls. But on the batting side, we saw him hit the hell out of the ball the other day, but he finished with 14 from 8 this time. And I think in terms of the Zimbabwe inning, the standout guy for the West Indies was Azari Joseph, getting 4 wickets for 16 runs, took 3 wickets between the 5th and the 7th overs. Just an outstanding bowling performance from him.
He was like, that was like the West Indian fast bowlers of old. He was quick, he was accurate. All 4 of his wickets were bowled. Nothing, no LBs, nothing off the bat. Like all 4 of them were balls. The ball hit the stumps. It was wonderful bowling. But that was almost traditional West Indian fast bowling. He was aggressive. He was either hitting the stumps or he was going to hit you in the neck. Like he was bowling short and fiery, pushing you away, backing you away from the stumps. And then he'd bowl these wonderful Yorkers and full-length deliveries to take out the wickets. I thought he was really, really impressive in this one. It's a shame he didn't get a fifth wicket. When he picked up his fourth, Muzarabani came to the wicket, and the poor kid, like, you can tell he's a bowler. He's a number 11 batsman for a reason. He looked clueless out there. But yeah, poor Joseph. He just couldn't get that final wicket, which is a shame. He deserved a 5-wicket match, 5-wicket ball for that match. He was excellent.
Yeah, he absolutely did, but he came up just short. But I think he'll take the win and over anything else. And I think we've got a little bit of time left. Is there anything else you want to mention on this Zimbabwe-West Indies match before we hop into our predictions for the next 2 days of action?
Yeah, I just want to say that I'm struggling to see the point of Kyle Mayers. He's opening the bowling and batting for the West Indians. And so far, like, his batting has been subpar and his bowling has been pretty damn awful. He only lasted 1 over in this match. He bowled the first over, got taken for 18. Yeah. If he's opening your bowling and your batting, I really think that the Windies need a better option at the top of the order, certainly for the bowling.
No, absolutely. He was just annihilated by the top of that Zimbabwe lineup. And even batting, he finished with 13 runs from 12 balls. So nothing super special there. Decent enough, but wasn't to be too much. But let's look ahead at the next 2 days of action, where on Wednesday night, Thursday morning in the US, Thursday afternoon, Thursday evening in Australia, we have the UAE versus Namibia and the Netherlands versus Sri Lanka. So what do you think of those two matches? And this is a group where 3 teams can really still advance. We mentioned the net run rate earlier, but.
And to be honest, I think the team that's on top of the group at the moment, the Dutch, are actually in the most danger. Mm-hmm. I expect that Sri Lanka, I think they've got their groove back. I think the UAE match was perfectly timed for them. So I think that they're back in the swing of things, and I think they'll beat the Dutch. That will bring them on to level on points. It'll bring them level on points with the Dutch, but also with a much better net run rate. In the other match, Namibia and UAE, I think that Namibia will take out the UAE pretty comfortably. Yeah. And Namibia have it all to play for. You know, if they win, they can potentially top the group here, whereas a loss could see them fall to third. So personally, I think that Sri Lanka will win and Namibia will win, and that will leave Namibia on top of the group. And Sri Lanka just edging out a Dutch side that can consider themselves very, very unlucky to be going home.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think Sri Lanka will get it done against the Netherlands. Namibia will cruise through the UAE. But as we mentioned, maybe it's honestly better for Sri Lanka to finish second in this group than first, considering first has to go into that group of death with England, Australia, and New Zealand. But the next day, we have 2 more matches in a group where everybody is tied on points. So anything is possible. All 4 teams can still advance. We have Scotland, Zimbabwe, and Ireland versus the West Indies. So what do you think of those 2?
This is an old-fashioned shootout. It's win or go home. Really? So, look, Ireland all 4 sides in this group have been really good. Like, let's not beat around the bush. I've been pretty impressed with all of these sides so far in various ways. I think that the West Indians will have enough to see out Ireland. I don't think we've seen a really good West Indian batting performance so far, and I think they're due for one. And I ultimately think that the gap between the West Indian bowling and the Irish batting, especially at the top of the order, is pretty broad. So I think the West Indians will take out the Irish, which will mean West Indies will go through and Ireland will go home. And in the other game, I'm going to predict Zimbabwe to beat Scotland. Scotland have won both of their matches so far based off big innings from people at the top of the order. This Zimbabwean, I'm really enamoured with these young quicks from Zimbabwe, and they all bowled pretty badly last night against the Windies. So I think that at least 1 or 2 of them are going to bounce back. And I don't think they'll let the Scottish top order get away from them. And the Scottish middle order just isn't good enough to set a big target. So I think it'll be West Indies and Zimbabwe to come out of Group B, and Ireland and Scotland to go home.
I agree with you. Pretty much out of time, so we'll wrap it up there. You guys can reach out to us. Check out all of our videos. It's for Jarrod, it's @hey_it's_JP on Twitter. Reach me on Twitter @JerryF007. And check out all our stuff on Vendetta Sports Media's YouTube page, Twitter, website, all of our cricket coverage. We'll have these episodes coming out every other day. Have a good one. See you later.